The smell of rain-soaked asphalt always took Evelyn Hart back to that night. The night she lost everything. She had been a rookie then, full of ambition and naive confidence. The call came in about a break-in at a quiet suburban home. She arrived too late. Inside, the scene was a nightmare. A family torn apart, their lives snuffed out by a killer who vanished into the night. Among the victims was her sister, Lila. Evelyn had promised to protect her. She failed. That failure became the crucible in which her resolve was forged. Every case she took was a step toward redemption, a chance to ensure no one else suffered as she had. But the scars remained, a constant reminder of what was at stake. The fog rolled in thick and impenetrable, swallowing the moonlight and muffling the sound of the midnight waves crashing against the jagged rocks of Blackthorn Cove. Detective Evelyn Hart stood on the cliff's edge, the wind tugging at her coat as she studied the scene below. A black sedan teetering precariously over the edge of the cliff, its taillights still glowing like crimson eyes in the gloom. A single shoe lay discarded a few feet from the car. Red leather, impossibly high heel. She crouched down, plucking it from the damp grass, and her fingers brushed against the faint trace of blood along the strap. This wasn't an accident. "Detective Hart?" a voice called out from behind her. She turned to see Officer Riley, his flashlight cutting through the fog as he approached. His young face was pale, his expression uneasy. "What is it?" she asked. He hesitated. "There's something in the car you'll want to see." Her heart sank. Evelyn straightened and strode toward the sedan, her boots crunching on the gravel. She peered through the cracked driver's side window and froze. Slumped over the steering wheel was a man, his face obscured by blood and shattered glass. A jagged shard protruded from his throat. But what stopped her cold was the folded piece of paper pinned to his chest by a knife. The paper was pristine, untouched by the blood. With gloved hands, she carefully pulled it free and unfolded it. Her breath caught as she read the words, "This is only the beginning." Evelyn's mind raced as the crime scene team worked around her, their flashlights cutting through the murk. Who was the man in the car? What did he know? And why did this cryptic message feel like a warning? Or worse, a challenge? By the time she returned to her small apartment in the heart of Blackthorn, the clock read 3:45 a.m. She tossed her coat onto the couch and poured herself a glass of whiskey, staring at the case file spread across her dining table. The victim's name was Mark Eldridge, a local real estate magnate with a reputation as slippery as an oil spill. He'd made enemies, plenty of them, and rumors of shady deals followed him wherever he went. But none of it explained the message or the meticulous way the scene had been staged. Her phone buzzed, jolting her from her thoughts. The number was unfamiliar, but she answered. "Detective Hart," she said, her tone brisk. A distorted voice crackled on the other end. "You found my note." Her grip tightened on the phone. "Who is this?" The voice chuckled, low and cold. "You're sharp, Detective. I've been watching you, but you're only scratching the surface. You'll need to dig deeper if you want to stop what's coming." "If this is some kind of game," she began, but the line went dead. She stared at her phone, the whiskey in her glass untouched. Her instincts screamed that she wasn't dealing with an ordinary killer. This was someone methodical, someone who enjoyed control. And they weren't done yet. Over the next week, the body count grew. A local journalist found dead in his locked office, an aspiring politician poisoned during a live broadcast, a tech CEO electrocuted in his own state-of-the-art shower. Each scene left behind a similar calling card, a bloodless note with a single chilling phrase. This is only the beginning. The media dubbed the killer the Architect, a name Evelyn found both apt and infuriating. Each murder was meticulously planned, executed with precision, and designed to send a message. But what message? She combed through the victims' backgrounds, searching for a connection, a thread to unravel the architect's motives. Nothing fit. Then, a breakthrough. A single fingerprint, partial but usable, lifted from the knife used to pin the note to the politician's chest. It led to a man named Victor Halloway, a former private investigator with a history of erratic behavior and a penchant for conspiracy theories. He'd gone off the grid 2 years earlier after his wife's disappearance. Evelyn tracked him to a dilapidated motel on the outskirts of town. She approached the room cautiously, her gun drawn. The door was slightly ajar, and a faint light spilled out into the hallway. She pushed the door open and stepped inside. Victor was waiting for her. He sat in a threadbare armchair, a loaded revolver resting on the table beside him. His eyes were wild, darting between her and the shadows that danced on the walls. "I knew you'd come," he said, his voice hoarse. "Victor Halloway," she began, keeping her tone steady. "I need you to come with me." He laughed, a dry, broken sound. "It doesn't matter what you do to me. The architect's already won." "What do you mean?" she demanded, stepping closer. He leaned forward, his expression dark. "You think this is about the murders? About some sick game? You don't see it, do you? They're building something." "Building what?" Victor opened his mouth to answer, but a gunshot rang out, shattering the tense silence. He slumped forward, blood pooling beneath him. Evelyn spun around, but the hallway was empty, the shooter long gone. Victor's death raised more questions than answers, but Evelyn couldn't ignore his final words. She pored over the evidence, searching for patterns, for clues she might have missed. And then she saw it. The locations of the murders formed a shape on the map, a perfect circle. At the center of the circle was an abandoned warehouse, long since condemned and forgotten. She assembled a team and prepared for a raid, her pulse racing. The architect would be there. She could feel it. The warehouse was a labyrinth of rusted machinery and crumbling walls. The air was thick with the scent of mildew and decay. Evelyn led the way, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. Her team fanned out, searching for any sign of the killer. They found it in the form of a massive blueprint spread across the floor. It depicted a machine of intricate design, its purpose unclear. Scrawled across the top were the words, "The beginning has ended. Now it begins." The lights cut out, plunging the room into darkness. A low hum filled the air, growing louder and more insistent. Evelyn's flashlight flickered, then died. Panic surged as she called out to her team, but her voice was drowned out by the deafening roar of machinery coming to life. And then she saw him, the architect, standing on a metal platform high above, his face obscured by a mask. "You're too late, detective," he called down, his voice amplified by the cavernous space. "The machine is already running. You can't stop it." Evelyn raised her gun, but the platform was empty before she could fire. The hum of the machine reached a crescendo, and a blinding light filled the room. She shielded her eyes, her mind racing with questions and fear. When the light faded, the warehouse was silent. The machine was gone, as was the architect. All that remained was a single note pinned to the blueprint. "See you in the next chapter." As the note fluttered to the ground, Evelyn's flashlight flickered back to life, illuminating fragments of blueprint scattered across the floor. Among them were cryptic symbols and half-drawn diagrams that defied explanation. In the corner of her eye, A silhouette lingered in the fog beyond the warehouse door. The architect, watching, waiting.